Hello, welcome to the Motorsport Review. I am once again Perry Brown, and this is actually episode number 50, would you believe it, already? So before I get any further into this race review, I just want to say thank you to everyone over the course of this year that has been involved, that has listened, that has done all the liking, sharing, subscribing, all those beautiful, wonderful things for this show. And obviously we're now into the second half, moving on to episode 100 after this one. So as I say, thank you very much. But joining me for episode 50, which is of course the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix review, I've got two long-time listeners, long-time participants in the show. I'm going to start with Tom. You were first in the queue. So Tom, welcome back to the Motorsport Review. How are you doing, first of all?
I'm all right, thank you. At home, watching the race itself, and of course, a huge shout out to all those in Biggin Hill and over at the circuit for the work they've done for Formula One. I'm sure it's been a long, enduring year with there being so many races, as well as the sprints, of course. But it won't be too long before we do it all again in 2026 when pre-season testing begins.
Absolutely, we've got a young drivers test on Tuesday, as they were alluding to after the race. It feels like Formula One is now a year-long endurance slog. So yeah, shout out to everyone involved, teams and otherwise. They don't get to have the off season so much. But of course, joining on the other side as well, we've got Corinne. Thank you very much for joining me. You were on way back when we reviewed the F1 launch show. I have managed to avoid getting the call in, but you've joined just at the right time. How are you doing?
I have indeed. In fact, I have literally just got back from Woking for a pub watch party. So a little bit hectic, but it's been a great day.
It has been a great day. Yes. Spoilers alert, if somehow you're listening to this podcast before you've seen the race, I wouldn't recommend that. But yes, we are going to talk about the fact that Max Verstappen's won the race and Lando Norris is the 2025 world champion. We're recording pretty much straight after the race, an hour and a half after the checkered flag, pretty much. So unless skid blocks or anything like that want to throw another firework into this season, let's hope not. But that's how we're going to play it, that there's no after race shenanigans and that result is final. Let's start. Let's get, I went to you first, Tom. Let's go back to you. That race, just to sum it up, I mean, it was the culmination of a season. I think all the neutrals were sort of watching on, thinking this is exactly what we want: three protagonists in the championship fight. As a race, if that was race 1, 2, 3 of the season, how do you think that delivered as its own spectacle?
I think with the race as it is, it's the 17th running of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. It doesn't feel that long since the very first one all the way back in 2009. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it kind of emphasizes like the action of which we've had throughout the whole year, because there've only been 2 races all year where I would class as races to remember, and those 2 are Australia and Silverstone. I think all the others are kind of like in the same realm as to how this year has planned out in terms of the track action that we've seen. I wouldn't say it's been the best, but it's something that can be worked on in the coming years, now that we're going into a new era next year with new cars, different fuels as well, new technical regulations, different power units. We've got the likes of Ford coming in, we've got Audi who are coming in as well, and the new Cadillac team, which will be running Ferrari powered to begin with before General Motors will arrive. But going back to Abu Dhabi, it was the kind of race I expected. It felt like the normal kind of race to expect in Abu Dhabi, where we are seeing a lot of track action, but we don't take anything away from it where we think, my goodness me, that was amazing. We couldn't believe that overtake he did to win the championship. I didn't really get those kind of vibes. It felt more like a game of strategy involved in the cars, really, which is a little bit of a shame. Having said that, we did see a lot of midfield action where drivers were coming through, drivers pitting in early, like those who were on the soft compound. Hamilton, Hülkenberg and Albon were on the soft compound to begin with. They all made the most of completing undercuts on those that were coming in. It was quite effective, actually, the undercut, compared to what we anticipated. I was happy with the race strategy side of things in terms of the aspects of some drivers doing 1 and others doing 2. That's the kind of race we should be seeing. Or if it's some drivers doing 2 and others doing 3, that would be perfectly fine with me. If it was just all the good doing 1 stop or 2 stop or 3 stop, we wouldn't be seeing the action that we're all desiring. Now that the race is finished, I'm happy that we've had the race we've had, because the season's over. We don't need to talk about who's been the best driver of the season, because we all know the answer to that. The best driver of the season has been Lando Norris, because he's achieved the most points over the course of 24 races and 6 sprints. But we can't take anything away from the fact that Max and Oscar have had tremendous seasons as well, considering that Piastri had stepped up at the beginning of the year. Yes, it's fallen away from him in the latter part of the year after Sandford, but it doesn't detract from the fact that he's been immense. He stepped up a gear from where he was last year as Oscar. And for Max, considering all the changes that have been going on at Red Bull, both on and off the circuit, and the way the car's been set up for him, I think he's done a superlative job to finish the season in the way he has done, to be within 2 points of Lando, and for the 5th year in a row, pick up the most wins in a car that had no right to be anywhere near fighting for the title. I would probably say this has been one of Max's best seasons, if not the best one, in a way.
I completely agree with that. I think I said maybe as much as 3 weeks ago, this is probably the best season he has put together. The fact that he's come 2 points short, as you say, of McLaren is, like, simply put, short of heroic. I mean, almost had no right being in that fight, as you say, and yet he's just somehow he's always there. He's just inevitable, isn't he? Won this race, and he must be thinking, man, if there was just one more race weekend, then we'd be sat there, Corinne, as McLaren fans, saying, I don't feel confident. That's not a 2 point gap I'd be happy with, but it's now done. Sum it up from the McLaren perspective. I'm obviously completely neutral,
of course.
so I don't know what it was like watching on as a McLaren fan. But how was the tension through that one?
I think to be fair, the tension over the last 4, maybe 5 races it's been building, and it's been a lot. And I'll add a race or a performance, if you will. Tom, obviously Verstappen's performance in Brazil was quite something, and I think that was really something to note from the season. For pit lane to podium is quite an achievement, let's be honest. I think, oh my gosh, I think we went up and down a lot in where we were, and sort of the sort of atmosphere, if you like, in the pub. But I think once I could see the 1 and 2 stop difference coming a mile off, and a lot of people around me were like, what do you mean he's going to stop again? Don't be, and I was like, no, because that's just not going to work. The tires and so on. And so there was a lot of debate and a lot of discussion about, was it going to work? Wasn't it? What are we doing? Are we doing the right thing? Yes, we did the right thing. Hooray. We got it right. No, it was good. And actually, I think for me, it shows that you can have 2 very strong drivers and still do well and win a championship, considering, essentially they are taking points off each other, which obviously Max doesn't necessarily have that. No disrespect to his teammates. And I think as well, I don't know, my other key takeaway from today is possibly nothing to do per se with the race, but actually just the diversity in the group of people that, we were watching with. Formula One is for everybody. And I do think that is such an important part of this, actually, just seeing how the sport has grown so much, certainly since I started watching it as a very small child, and just taking that on board, it's quite emotional, actually.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, this season, seeing the ups and downs. I add to that, some of what we've seen online has been a bit toxic. We've seen some of the lesser traits that we want to see from people. As this championship fight has developed, we've certainly seen people saying, well, you can't have 2 people in the same team racing for the same championship. And then I feel like the emergence of Max has really helped that, when we're sort of going, no, actually they're trying to navigate 2 drivers to a championship defending against someone else who they've got no say on. You can argue all you like about favoritism between Lando and Oscar, but at the end of the day, there's clearly going to be a favoritism between them that's not towards Verstappen. So once that emerged, I think it died down a little bit, and they realized, no, they are really just trying their very best. And as we saw in the last 2 weeks, as you alluded to, made mistakes, they've made errors, and it's like, it's not that they've made mistakes to harm one of their drivers, they've just made fundamental errors, and it's given us this fantastic fight, which we can now say, now that we're done sort of doing all the going through the emotions, going through all of it from a neutral perspective, obviously, going through it all completely and just hoping and willing it through. And the other thing is that execution is this word that I've said about Red Bull for years now, it feels like, and Max Verstappen, that they just do not leave any room or margin. You know, you have to be perfect over a season. You have to be perfect. McLaren have been far from that, but they've just had that car advantage, maybe not all the way to the end. And that's where I'd like to really sort of kick off, is qualifying, because going into this weekend, I was looking at last year, the fact that we had a front row lockout as we were looking to seal the Constructors' Championship. So I was saying all along, the best route to the McLaren champion from this is another front row lockout, and then see if Max can get third place. And inevitably, as Max does, he went and rewrote the script and said, I'll give you pole position instead, and we'll go that way. Tom, talk us through what your thoughts were when you saw that grid lineup and you saw Max achieve such a wonderful pole position with such a great lap. Were you thinking this, you know, again, from the actual true neutral perspective there, were you thinking this has set up the race nicely? And what were you thinking Max's best play from that point was going to be?
I mean, Max's aim was to make sure he didn't leave any room on the table for Lando or Oscar to pick up. And so he got off the line sweetly. I did have a feeling that Lando might have got the jump on him in a similar way to how Lewis did 4 years ago. But the difference is that Max and Lando were on the same compound. Piastri wasn't. He went on the hard compound to begin the race on. So I wasn't expecting Piastri to do anything. Verstappen had to make sure he got the best start he had in a long time, and he duly did it. But I don't know. It was always going to be a tall order from lights out, really, for Max to take it. I mean, if we had a late safety car, it would have changed the whole complexion. Drivers would have gone onto the soft compounds. McLaren would have asked Piastri to let Norris by so that they could use Piastri as a shield to make sure Lando had won it. It could have gone in a very different way for Lando to win it. And then we would have had a somewhat different discussion in terms of the way McLaren have handled it. But today, as it happened, McLaren handled it very, very well. And I'm very happy that they've done that. But do you know what really contributed to the success of today is from last year when McLaren sealed the Constructors' Championship. Last year, McLaren hadn't been in such a situation where they've had to fight for a driver's title or a Constructors' Championship crown in a genuine fashion. I mean, the last time they were able to was 2010 before that. But that was because Hamilton needed to win the race and for everything else to go for him, which was never going to happen. But the way McLaren handled the situation today was similar to last year, where they knew what they needed to do. They didn't take too many risks with getting the result. They didn't need to win. They just needed to get enough. And they went and got it without any silly errors with pit stops. Either their drivers exceeding track limits, drivers pushing too hard, going over those curbs, which have been a bit of a feat this weekend, where drivers have gone over the curbs too much, where they've exceeded track limits. We saw it with Lewis Hamilton in practice on Saturday, where he caught the curb on the outside at turn 9 and went into the barrier. Thankfully, we didn't see any drivers from McLaren making a similar mistake or anything like that. They just got on with it, got a clean start all the way through, and finished on the podium with both drivers, which was the objective, I think, coming into it. So very happy for them, very happy for McLaren that they finally won their first double since 1998. So yeah, I was only in my first year of nursery the last time that's happened. Well, thankfully at the age of 30, it's happened today.
Thanks, Tom. Cheers for that.
Way to make us feel old, Tom. Cheers.
I know. I do apologise for that, but yeah, it was that long ago.
Baby of the group. Yes, I was just watching Formula One. I'd certainly seen some of 96. I'd seen all of 97, and I decided in that season I didn't like the red cars. Not to play favoritism at all, or a completely neutral. Sorry, that's what we're going for, isn't it? Completely neutral. But I decided I didn't like red cars. And then unfortunately, Williams painted theirs red in 98. So I was a very young McLaren fan watching that season, that last time. And I've said before on this podcast, on other podcasts as well, I just always assumed that McLaren were one of these teams that would just be in the championship fight. I really didn't know what I was watching. I just went, oh, we've won the double. Okay, fantastic. So now, all these years later, to do it, it just feels so much more incredible, and not least from the position that we've come from as well, like just a few seasons ago to do it. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster. I'm going to keep saying that, a real roller coaster to get to where we got to today. And you said it, risk free. You know, they saw what they needed to do. They didn't overplay it, or which they've done on occasion this year, where they've sort of played themselves. And we said this last week after Qatar, where they sort of tore up their own script somehow, where we all assumed they'd do the thing that everyone else was going to do, the thing that made sense, and we sort of lay into them a little bit. So Corinne, same sort of question to you. Seeing Max Verstappen on pole position, as a neutral myself, I keep saying I'm going to keep saying it till I believe it.
I think. Honestly, all right, yeah, all right then. Okay, so for Tom, 1998, I was doing my GCSEs. Okay, so that gives
no
you
comment then. No comment.
Context, and you know, I had quite a well-established McLaren sort of fan sort of base already from my father, my grandfather. But there you go. I think, do you know what? Going back to, I think it was very much like that'll do. It was kind of like, okay, look, you know, if Max is just going to drive off and disappear into the distance, fine. That's fine. You know, from the perspective of Lando, that's fine. From the perspective of Oscar, that's then a different thing, which was why it was interesting. And it's something that the team haven't really done throughout the year. Is you saw the split strategy. You saw them on different tire compounds, trying something different with each driver, to see if they could each get the maximum that they needed to win the championship. To my mind, they gave them a fair chance, and you have to kind of commend the team for that. You know, even at the sort of the last minute, where actually Oscar's chances did rely on the results of other people and were kind of, you know, becoming an outside chance, they still gave him the chance. And like I said, you know, you've got to commend the team for that. I mean, I think, you know, everyone was just hoping for a clean start. I think from where we were, you know, watching, it was kind of a race of like, okay, we get the start done, and then it's like, okay, we'll get to the first pit stops, and you sort of marking it in those sort of milestones, and that's, you could feel the tension kind of shifting and changing when those milestones were approaching, I suppose.
Yeah, it's exactly correct. Like a checklist, just going, right, we've done the pits. When Lando came the first time, I was like, we've got the pit stop out of the way. And I wasn't like, you mentioned that you were sat there going, oh, I think it might be a 2-stop. I wasn't there at all. I was fully on this is going to be a 1-stop race. So I thought that's it done. But yeah, just hitting the milestones, hitting those goals, getting the job done. It really showed to me that split strategy at the start. You know, there's been a lot of debate this week about Qatar and about the fact that, you know, people saying, well, if they both pitted at that lap 7 when everyone else pitted, that Lando was going to be affected negatively. So to be fair, they decided not to pit Oscar, and have been arguing with those people. Not arguing, that sounds negative. Kindly debating and putting my opinion across that actually I think that McLaren just got the decision wrong, and it kind of answered that here where they did split the strategy. So it was clearly something on the table. If they felt it was the right move to do, that they would do it. And for me, as I say, I commended McLaren for that, because I thought, okay, Oscar's route to the championship here is to do something different. If he starts a medium, starts third, he's maybe going to put himself ahead of Lando at the start, but he's got to get ahead of Max, and he's not going to do it doing the same as Max didn't feel. So yeah, highly commended that he took that roll of the dice. That brings us round just half a lap to, I think it was turn 10. Lando, Oscar, we see them race wheel to wheel. No DRS in this one, which of course we waved goodbye to today. I didn't actually make a note of who was the last person to press the DRS button. But Tom, just to go to that move, that pass that Piastri put on Lando Norris, it was a great pass, but there was the question, do you think it was a scripted move where they got Oscar ahead, or do you think that was a genuine Piastri saying, I need this move right here, right now, if I've got any chance today?
Yeah, I think he decided to go for it as of when he wanted to there, Oscar. So I don't want to say that was scripted, because why would you script a move on the first lap? You know, unless it was absolutely unless Piastri wasn't in the championship fight anyway, which he clearly was. What made you think he wasn't going to go for it when the opportunity was there? He was always going to go for it, was Oscar. I'm just happy that it didn't end up, banging wheel to wheel coming out of there, because otherwise that would have been very, very disastrous for McLaren, and it would have played into Red Bull's hands easily. So for the fact that Piastri pulled off that overtake was actually mega, because there was no DRS involved. He obviously used up his battery to get into the slipstream and get alongside and have his nose in front by turn 9. And Piastri finished essentially where, people thought it was going to end up, because I thought Norris was going to end up maybe in P3 by the end of it, which he was. So I think McLaren can be very happy that they've had the kind of race they've had without having to bring team orders into it. And that's another thing, papaya rules. I still don't think we know what papaya rules are, do we? Because I don't.
I think it was just very clearly, you're free to race, just don't collide. But we've seen the team interject at times. We saw it straight away in Australia. They were coming up to back markers and they said, do you know what, just for now. That's one thing, again, that's been confused throughout the year, where they said to Piastri, don't race Norris. No, they said, whilst we're going through the back markers and there's added risk, don't go and race Lando Norris. And then once they were through, they were back free and racing. So that's all it was to me, papaya rules. It's just don't take extra risk when trying to overtake your teammate. Let's protect what we've got. 2 good positions, team comes first, don't collide. Simple as that. It was never going to be, Oscar, you're going to be asked to pit because we actually quite like Lando. We want him to win the championship, as people online have seemed to have made it out to be. So Corinne, your view very quickly on that Piastri move. Again, I've said all year, he seems to have the racecraft of the two seems to go his way if you were to do top trumps, I think. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Tom. I don't think it was scripted at all. I think it was fascinating, actually, the fact that obviously he was on the hard tyre and he clearly managed to fire that up really fast. And I think maybe that was the first indicator of maybe what was to come a little bit, and that being kind of the preferred tyre for a lot of them for a reasonable amount of time. There were a variety of strategies at play, of course. And he was doing what he needed to do. And I don't think Lando was going to fight him too hard, because, you risk both, both your opportunities if you do. So I thought it was all very sensible, and yes, happy, more of that. We like sensible.
We do. We want to see good racing, whether it's between teammates or other cars, don't we? And I think Piastri knew he had everything to win by overtaking Norris, and Norris had everything to lose by there being contact. So yeah, I think he knew that the defense wouldn't come in that move. So I'm with both of you. I don't think that was scripted. It was interesting then hearing from Zach on the pit wall later saying that he expected the move to happen, and again, everyone reading that going, well, it's scripted then. But no, just as in, you read the position of the two drivers, you expect at some point that your one that needs to win the race has got to come through past the other one who doesn't need to win the race. So yeah, that leads us nicely into Lando Norris in P3, Verstappen's winning the race. This is, I think, the situation most people thought would happen. And then Charles Leclerc appears. So we got to talk about Ferrari in this one. And for a second year in a row, we're watching a McLaren driver trying to fend off desperately a Ferrari driver from costing them the championship. It just suddenly felt like, Ferrari haven't been in the races for so long, and suddenly there was Charles Leclerc right at the bottom. I'm going to go back to you, Corinne. Just in that moment where we're thinking Ferrari are done with 2025. The SF25 has not been the car they want it to be. I've heard they've switched off the development tap after China when they realized they had fundamental issues, and then here they are at the last race again, suddenly remembering, oh yeah, we can go out there and score some points. Seeing Charles put that pressure on, were you feeling one of the many tension points of this race?
We did, and it's quite entertaining actually, because obviously you all know one person who was at this meetup, and his wife is one of the biggest Charles Leclerc fans that exists, and she was the only one in the pub, So it was, she had a moment, and and it was lovely. But yeah, no, the pressure, it was kind of like, where's that come from? I think maybe we expected it to be from Mercedes, possibly from George, rather than from Ferrari. But then I think later on it sort of became apparent that the tyre wear was an issue, and we were kind of like, well, okay, is this comfortable? Because I remember they came on the radio to Lando and said, this is okay as long as you're comfortable, and it was like, are you comfortable? I'm not sure. Is this okay for you? Keep having a Ferrari essentially in your DRS lap after lap. But then it kind of just went away. Like, it sort of ebbed and flowed a bit, and then it was kind of like, well, okay, maybe kind of that sums up Ferrari season a little bit as well.
Yeah, very true. It was hovering around. It was anywhere between 1.2 and 0.8. So he was getting DRS some laps. He was getting very close, and then just seemed to have to cool off the tyres and back out of it again. And then suddenly by the pit stop, it was like up to four seconds. But he was just right there, wasn't he? And George Russell was in that fight. He obviously triggered that first series of pit stops when he came in. And a shout out to Fernando Alonso as well, also in this fight. So we were watching the three at the front. There was this bigger battle going on behind that, of course, affected this battle at the front. But a moment for Mercedes and Russell, because as we got towards the end of the race, we noticed, Tom, that they were not really in this fight anymore. They'd somehow fallen apart. Tom, can you give us some guidance as to where the Mercedes challenge sort of evaporated? We thought, well, certainly I thought, as the track conditions cooled, that the Mercedes would come into its own and be a force later on, but that just wasn't the case tonight.
No, and I think they didn't exactly get the strategy right. I think Antonelli's weekend was ruined by the fact that he got knocked out in Q2, starting from 14th. It's a strange one because we saw more tyre wear than we could have anticipated. And another of the factors to throw in there is the wind speed. I mean, the wind speed has an effect on how the driver chooses to put as much load into the tyres when they're going through corners. So if you've got a side wind, let's say going through turn 9 through a medium speed corner, that is going to have an effect on how the tyres handle through corners like that. Given it's an anti-clockwise circuit, it's the right front that takes more of the beating than the left. So that is the tyre which the drivers would have been struggling most on throughout that. But talking about your point with Mercedes, I don't know where the pace had gone from what it was in Qatar, because we saw Antonelli being in the fight for a podium, but so all of a sudden the pace just wasn't there for him today. I don't know whether it's the strategy, but I think even if he did nail the strategy, he wasn't going to be anywhere near towards the top like it was a week ago. So I don't know where it had gone there for Mercedes, but they've still done enough to finish second in the Constructors' Championship, which I think, given the fact they've won 2 races, they got a sprint pole, which Antonelli got in Miami. I don't think it's been a bad season, but they need to work on this if they're to be fighting for the championship again.
Yeah, I think they'll be very happy, won't they, with the regulations coming in next year. They haven't got to deal with these flaws. It hasn't really been in their favour, has it? This regulation set, so they'll be bringing on the reset more than any other team up and down that grid, I think, perhaps. But yeah, to get second place in the constructors' standings is a monumental effort from them to do so. And yeah, this, I mean, don't take this one race and say, oh, Mercedes were poor. They've been so good the last few races. We got that higher expectation of them that they would be closer to the fight. And just to go back to Ferrari, Corinne, as well, because Hamilton made up a good few places today. He had a good strategy, good racing, didn't quite have enough to get past Ocon, but finished 8th from where he started. I think he started 16th, didn't he? The Latifi position.
Yeah. Yes. Flashbacks. Yeah, and I think it was interesting. Someone called it like one of his sort of just quiet, stealthy drives, and he was just making his way through, quietly doing his thing, getting the overtakes done. Yeah, strategy worked. I hope that maybe there's some positive there that he can take from the season. Seeing him in the interviews and in the pen and things like that, as low as he's been, and as lost really as he's been, as to what on earth is sort of going on. It's been hard to watch, actually, and no one wants that for someone who is so highly respected within the sport. So I hope that Ferrari have a very honest winter, and a very open and listening winter, and let's maybe see what happens next year. But I mean, I think with the rule changes and the rule set, I think it's all up in the air, isn't it? I don't think we really know at all what this is going to look like.
I think we genuinely approach 2026, and I think there's as many as 5, maybe even 6 teams that you can say might have a realistic chance of being the top dog. And isn't that exciting? I mean, it might get to the first race and one team walks it as 2 seconds a lap quicker, because that's what happens when there's a new rule set. But the fact we don't know which team it is at this point in time is exciting. There's a number of teams like Aston Martin, like Ferrari, like Mercedes that were in that fight today, that were close enough to the front, where if they've made good gains and if they've switched off the tap early enough in 2025 on development, who knows? And Adrian Newey's a genius, isn't he? So I mean, Aston Martin could be good. So I want to give a word out to Aston Martin there, Tom. As I alluded to, Fernando Alonso was doing backflips, I think, having qualified in 6th place. Lance Stroll just outside of the top 10, and he managed to battle his way back into a double points scoring weekend for them, which they haven't had too many of this year. But yeah, it was a good one for them, wasn't it? Good way to sign off the season.
I think Stroll ended up P11.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I think he ended up P11. But yeah, I mean, they've ended the season strongly, Aston Martin, particularly Alonso. I thought had a good weekend today. But they'll be happy to see the back of it, because they've not really made any progress this year in terms of where they were from last. But now that Adrian Newey has arrived, not only arriving, but now he's the team principal of the squad, who knows where it could lead for them now that they've actually done their last race with Mercedes power units.
That's
a marriage
very
which has
true.
gone back as far as 2009. So after 17 years, the Silverstone-based team will not be running Mercedes engines. They'll be switching to Honda from next year.
It's very true. Yeah, there's just so many stories and caveats, isn't there, to 2026 going on. On that, you just alluded to that news. I'll fire straight back to you then very quickly on that. Adrian Newey, team principal at Aston Martin. I mean, we're all a bit taken aback, weren't we, by that news this week? But I'm guessing you're going to see it as a positive. He's been a stalwart of Formula One for what, 30, 40 years now. He's just a genius that understands the sport. It can only be a good thing, right, that he's team principal.
Yeah. The thing is with Adrian Newey, as good as he is as a car designer, he's not someone who philosophically makes something new, like a relatively new design out of nowhere. He looks at what other teams do. He draws it down and he makes an innovation of what he has found to make the cars of what he designs as quick as they need to be. That's how I look at Adrian Newey. Now, I'm not saying that what he's doing is wrong, because it's not, it's within the rules. He has every right to do the job he's there to do. But he does a very, very talented job in what he has done, throughout his time with, even at Leightonhouse, Stroke March, because, he was with them to begin with before he moved on to Williams, McLaren, Red Bull, and now Aston Martin. How long will it be before Aston Martin finally get themselves in the conversation of being a relatively top dog team? It may be after Alonso leaves for that to happen, but I've got a feeling that they might finally be on the road to something truly special if they get it right. But you mentioned about the new regulations in terms of one team running away with it and not knowing which team that will be. It's about rolling the dice and getting it right to begin with. And then it's a matter of time before the other teams follow suit and basically find the right numbers in terms of where their car needs to be in terms of design, no matter where you go. Because what we've learned now in Formula One is it's not about having a quick car on every single circuit you need to be going to. It's having a car that is quick enough that's going to get you the results that you need. Because there are going to be circuits which are going to favour your car more and ones that are going to favour others. You just need to make sure that you are prepared for any situation in terms of, right, what is the minimum target that we need to achieve with this? And it's about maximising what you've got. That's why McLaren have won the Constructors' Championship as well as the Drivers' Championship. Aston Martin needs to have that within them. They need to maximize the results that they can get with whatever car design they go with. And they have to know whether they are ready for a world championship. Because every team principal or senior member of the squad saying, right, we're going to fight for a world championship in 5 years. Okay, how are you going to do that? Because it's a tougher job to fight for a world championship than you would ever imagine when it comes to motor racing in general. And Aston Martin needs to be realistic with their goals. They've got the sponsorship. They've got a 2-time world champion that's there. You've got one who I think is still needing to find the right feet within the team in Lance Stroll. I know he's been there for a long time, but we haven't seen the Lance Stroll of which we know of what we can see in him. We've seen it in Alonso since he's been there, particularly when he joined in 2023, when he put on that run of podium finishes to begin with. Can they do that in 2026? I'm not too sure. There will be so many other teams in there that will think that they can get on the podium or fight for race wins. You think about Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin, Williams, if they can get it right. And of course, Audi. Audi are going to be one of the talking points next year. A relatively new sport for them. Audi have never been on the Formula 1 grid before, whether it be as a team, an engine supplier, or even a brand for that matter. This is a relatively new thing for them. And if they roll the dice and get the right numbers coming up for them, we could well be seeing Audi fighting towards the front. Maybe not the favourites, because I think McLaren will be the favourites. But this is the kind of thing that Aston Martin needs to think about. Right, who are our real competition if we're going to fight for podiums and race wins? This can end up being the most fierce Formula 1 season to date if we see those teams fighting towards the front and seeing different race winners, each and every one.
I really hope so. I really, really hope so. If every race is absolutely cracking and it gets to the point where towards the end of the season, it's just someone's won 4 races, someone's won 3 races, but no one's really taken the championship by a stranglehold, and we've just got all these different factors, I'll be so happy. Even, hand on heart, even if McLaren haven't taken any of those wins, if we just see,
perspective, of course, Harry.
Of course. Thank you for reminding me that I'm neutral. Even if McLaren went in that, we just want to see those good races. So, coming back to Abu Dhabi in that regards, as I said and alluded to at the start, it wasn't that kind of race today, certainly at the front. A small shout out as well to the race direction, which I thought was a bit poor, because they focused heavily on the front. And as you had said earlier, there was a lot of midfield battling and they didn't really show too much of that. But the fight at the front wasn't too exciting. It was just tense. Corinne, to sum up, I'd say the 50 laps or so that sort of followed Oscar being second, a bit of tension from Charles Leclerc, and then just eventually that sort of ebbing away, but never fully not being there. What were your thoughts on that? Certainly I was thinking McLaren aren't going to catch Verstappen here, so we're just watching, hoping not to see smoke out the back of one of the cars, really.
Yeah, basically. And I think it felt quite long, and I think a few of us were trying to figure out, well, okay, so Lando stopped twice. Is Oscar going to stop twice? Is Max going to stop twice? There was a point where he could have done and actually not ended up, behind. I can't even work it out. In my head. It gives you an idea. But there were points where it was like, oh, but they could do that now, and that would be okay. And and then it was like, well, actually, are they actually just going to try and run out of one slot? Because there's no way that they're going to be able to catch him now. And then it's like, well, we just need it to be settled then, and just calm, and hope that actually with all that midfield battling that you alluded to that we didn't really see, that none of them really trip over each other and cause any sort of incident that would have warranted a safety car. And it was noticeable about 6 laps before the end, they were still talking about, if there was a safety car, what would you do? And it was kind of like, well, what would you like to do? And we were kind of like, can we not? Can we just, just get
it's
to
good
the
to
end?
have the chat, but
yeah, like I said, the atmosphere was broadly sort of good. But like I said, it's those tension points. It's the pit stops. It's the all that sort of thing. But I guess it wasn't. It wasn't a classic, was it? Let's be honest. But I think actually, from a completely biased point of view, that's exactly what we needed. And actually, from as from my perspective, I think I would have been happy either way, to be honest. You know, I'm from the West Country originally, you know, Lando's from there and all the rest of it, but actually it was more about, you know, they both kind of deserved it in their own way for different reasons, and I think I would have been happy either way.
Yeah, I've said all along, you know, as long as it was a McLaren driver or Verstappen, being neutral again, obviously, any of the three, I think this argument about who deserved it, I think is dead and buried. All three of them deserved it, 100%. I'd never understood that, really. It's sort of something that came along in 2021, wasn't it? With people saying, oh, Max deserves it more, Hamilton deserves it more. Well, as Tom alluded to earlier, again, the driver with the most points deserves it the most. And that's how Formula One has worked for 75 years and will continue to work. So, yeah, one of the big flashpoints then, of course, was Lando Norris pits. He's behind some of the runners on hard tyres, has quite little effort getting through some of them. We had double overtakes, which I thought was brilliant, where he lines up one move on, I think it was Stroll, and almost accidentally also goes past, I think it was Hadjar, again, trying to work out at this point. And then Leclerc goes, well, anything you can do, I can do better. And then, of course, the big one, Yuki Tsunoda, teammate to Max Verstappen. I'm going to go to you as the true neutral here, Tom, in this debate. Obviously, we see Lando come up to the back of his car. There's a little bit of weaving, should we say, from Yuki Tsunoda. Lando overtakes off the circuit, and then it all goes up for investigation. Give us your viewpoint on it. We obviously saw a 5-second penalty for Tsunoda. Do you agree fully with what we saw from the stewards there?
Well, if they didn't get the penalty, it would have encouraged other drivers to do exactly the same as what Tsunoda did. So I'm not at all surprised that Tsunoda got that penalty, because it was dangerous. You can't make more than one change of direction when defending the position before the braking zone. And yes, if Norris did put all four wheels over the white line, it would be the tiniest ever margin. Because, you know, if you look at the blue paint on the white line, if there was anything still left on the white line, it would have been a very, very tiny amount. But it doesn't excuse Tsunoda running him off the circuit the way he was doing, judging by the way he was changing direction. I think it was 4 times, actually, when he was defending before Norris finally got alongside. That was dangerous driving, blatant for me, for Tsunoda. And the fact he only got 5 seconds, he should count himself lucky, because, you know, if Lando ended up going airborne, which is what I think could have happened, it would have, the whole discussion about the race would have imploded on that one incident. So that was, for me, a wake-up call for Tsunoda. I don't know if he picks up any penalty points for that. If he has, then he cannot have any complaints, because he'll look back at that. He'll look back on the replay and think, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. Because, yeah, he would have been trying to help Max for the championship, but it doesn't. I'm sure it's not within his protocol to say run the driver off the road, because you can't run drivers off the road in any way, shape, or form, because it's not part of motor racing in general. So that's pretty much all you need to know, really, in terms of that particular squabble. Norris got by him eventually, but you know, that was probably the closest to Lando not winning the championship, and the whole discussion with it would have gone long into the night.
I didn't want to. I said after Qatar, I was like, I want this to be a clean race from whichever camp. I don't want to see Lando bowling through the other two and then them all retired at the end of turn 1 or anything, any underhand tactics, to say the least. And this, as Martin Brundle alluded to during the commentary, felt like the most underhand that it got, and I was quite grateful. I mean, as I say, even if Norris had got a penalty for that, I think Corinne, you and I, me as a neutral, obviously, would have righted and discussed it long into the night. So when it came up for investigation, give us the McLaren perspective.
I mean, I think from our point, from my point of view, I was kind of like, yeah, it's fine, because so my point of view was that, you know, what Lando did to put him to end up under investigation was as a result of what Tsunoda did. So you know, you can't punish someone as a result of someone else's dangerous driving, as Tom has said. So, and it looked to me from like the cameras, I was like, broadly, he's still on the track, you know, just about. So actually, it's fine. And I have a couple of people, and I was like, it's fine. I said, I was on very much sort of like, I think Tsunoda will get a penalty, and I think they will say no further action for Lando, and that's exactly how it played out. So maybe I should be a steward. Maybe I should apply.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got 3 agreeing answers there, which normally says they've got it right, doesn't it? So, yeah, I was the same. I couldn't believe when it came up under investigation. I thought, well, that'll be Tsunoda, surely, and then it was like 2 joint. I was going to say noted. I don't know if that means whether it's actually gone to investigation, but I think they actually gave 2 rulings on those. So they said yes, the weaving, the moving. I rewatched it actually just before we went on air, and it wasn't just the fact he moves from one side of the track to the other, then back and then back again. He almost stops just as Lando's about to come round to his left-hand side. He stopped moving left, and then he sees him in his left mirror and goes, I've left a gap, like almost like I've left a bit of a gap there. So he moves again. And that's why I think, you know, even more so that Lando Norris is going, well, what are you playing now? Like, he's had to go off the track. He's given him a wide berth to try and avoid being almost like torpedoed and taken out. And then, as you say, Tom, I mean, that scenario, I don't even want to discuss what could have happened from that, whether he got a penalty or if he'd gone airborne from that. So, yeah, quite right that he got a penalty for that. I suspect he'll have at least 1 penalty point on his license, which of course doesn't really matter because he's not really in F1 racing next year. He's obviously testing reserve for Red Bull. Maybe won't see him back in F1, but we'll see what happens in 2027 or indeed throughout 2026 if someone needs to be moved on hastily. So yeah, from that point onwards, then it was quite straightforward race. As I say, we were discussing and thinking, like, is there a chance for a late safety car? And as they're doing that, Lance Stroll's putting moves on people. And I think it's not too unkind that we've already discussed here that he's probably not the greatest wheel-to-wheel race that Formula One's seen. And you sort of sat there thinking, God, I just want this over. And of course, then that moment arrives. Lando Norris crosses the line and is this year's champion. So starting with you, Tom, just a second, just to I'd say sum up the season in that regards about each of our challenges and then on Lando's championship win.
I would want to say it's been a McLaren whitewash, but I don't think it's been exactly a McLaren whitewash as we had all expected it to be, because Red Bull and Max just all of a sudden became a different team from what they were. And that's going to be one of the talking points heading into the winter. Are Red Bull going to mount a serious challenge? Ford are coming in, which is going to be relatively new for them, and we won't really know where Red Bull are until pre-season testing is done in Bahrain. But in regards to this season, the results tell the story that you need to know in regards to the battle. Some of the battling we've seen has been decent, but I wish we had seen more. But I'm confident with the new regulations, with the new cars, new power units, a new team that's coming in Cadillac, we should see some brilliant on-track battling. And have you noticed as well that the grid is relatively unchanged compared to this year? That could really help in a way because the drivers are familiar with their machines. So in a way, if they know their machines, they know what they're capable of doing, and they've adapted to them, and they can adapt to the new regulations, I think we're going to be seeing more battling. Because as good of an overtake as good an overtake can be, the battles speak louder volumes, and I think we're going to see more of that with these new cars.
I very much hope so. As I say, I really hope that the racing really delivers. And I think, again, I was watching back clips from like Abu Dhabi's from previous, like races from previous, and this ability to follow closely has been a real pain in the thorn of the developers and of the drivers. And although I'd say the regulations aren't quite there in allowing that, they seem to sort of allow a driver to force the other off the track and end it in one corner. The ability to sit as close as they were, again, Charles Leclerc today, I don't think he could have sat as close as he did to Lando for that many laps, 2021 and prior. So hopefully it's another positive step when they make these car changes next year, that they can follow closer, they can battle even harder. So Corinne, same sort of question to yourself. Oh, sorry, Tom, you had your hand up there as if you
can we give a shout out as well to Sauber, because with it being their last Formula One race before they become Audi, because, you know, after a long period of time, I think since 1993, the Sauber name has been on the grid even during the days of BMW. Going out with a point, thanks to Hulkenberg, I think it was, that got into the points. It's been a fun ride with them. We will miss them. But of course, moving with the times, it's the beginning of a new era from when Audi arrive on the grid in Australia.
That's a great shout out. Yes. It is a shame to sort of, we've seen the Sauber name disappear from the team, but we've never really seen Sauber disappear from the grid like it's going to happen next year. Yeah, that is a great shout. Yeah, they sort of will be missed, of course. And from someone that wrote off their season pre-season as well, I said 2025 is going to be a holding year. They're just going to wait to become Audi next year. They're not going to deliver anything. And as you say, delivering a point in the final race, but also delivering the season they have. A shout out to them. Fantastic. And Bortoleto as well, in the running for Rookie of the Year, I think, in all those discussions to be had in the off season. So Corinne, that same question to yourself on the 3 title contenders and the race that we got and the season that we've got from them.
Oh, I mean, it's ebbed and flowed, hasn't it? I mean, they've sort of had these sort of periods almost of domination. You know, Oscar was leading the championship for so long, and then obviously it's sort of, for whatever reason, things have sort of dropped off. Max wasn't there, and then he suddenly was, and it's sort of been creeping. And Lando's sort of, it's been really up and down, hasn't it, at points? But at the same time, he has been consistent. You know, that number of podiums, you know, for him, it's, you know, it's a fabulous achievement. And, you know, he said it himself in the interviews, you know, it's a testament to, you know, the dedication and the amount of time that, you know, he's put in his life, and his, you know, the team around him and his family and everything else. I mean, I think the season as a whole, you know, setting the championship aside for one sec, actually is probably highlighted by some of the rookies and the stories and the journeys that they have been on. You know, thinking about Hadjar, like crashing on the formation lap in Australia, and then to go on and have the season he's had. You know, you said it yourself about sort of writing Sauber off at the beginning of the season, and yet Nico Hülkenberg got a podium for that team. I think Ollie Behrman's had a really great season, actually. It's been a long ride, but it's been a fun ride, actually, with all the other things sort of going on. You know, yes, as a McLaren fan, of course, I am over the moon that, you know, we have a drivers' champion and we have won the constructors, but there is so much more to it than that. Yeah.
Absolutely right. And, you know, we have had races where multiple different drivers could have won the race and have prepared at different times, and you sort of go, oh, this one's between Max and George, and then suddenly a McLaren appears, or this McLaren's got this in the bag, and then suddenly it's really not between them at all. In fact, they're just having one of their off weekends. It's been all over, and I love that. I love approaching a weekend and not being certain about what that order is going to be, even looking to last year and going, well, Las Vegas, Mercedes is going to be quick, and then yes, they are, but it's not really their fight as much as elsewhere. And suddenly arriving in Canada, McLaren are going to be quick, and then suddenly Mercedes out of nowhere, they hadn't been anywhere before that. It's been one of those seasons. So yeah, I completely agree. It's been a standout, I think, and season one to look back on in years to come. I always ask these 2 questions. Corinne, I'm going to give you the choice on which one you get to answer first, because Tom then gets to answer the other one first. So I always ask for driver of the weekend as opposed to the day, driver of the weekend, and your highlight of the weekend as well. So you can pick one, you can answer that. Tom will then answer, and then he'll answer both at the same time.
Can I have highlight of the weekend, please?
You can indeed. That's yours. Highlight of the weekend then, please.
Highlight of the weekend was, I think for me, was Lewis Hamilton's recovery from poor qualifying to end up in points.
Fantastic. So Tom, same question, highlight of the weekend, and then after that you can have your driver of the weekend.
Highlight of the weekend, I think it is going to have to be Norris becoming world champion. It's a monumentous moment for him and for the team, their first drivers' championship for 17 years. And it's the celebration is going to go long into tonight. You know, shout out to his family as well, who have been with him throughout his career from the days of karting. You know, his dad Adam, I can't remember his mum's name, so I do apologise for that. But she'll be Siska. That was it. She'll be a very, very proud mum. And goodness knows what it could really lead to in the years to come for both Lando and for the team. Despite the fact that he only won 7 races this year to win the championship, which is the lowest number of victories for a driver to win the championship since 2012 with Vettel, who had won only 5 that year. So that tells you something about this season, his consistency with points. Driver of the weekend, I'm going to give it to Max. I think the way he's got on with it, he's done the maximum he could have done. I think there was a thing about Red Bull maybe put him onto a soft compound for the end, just to maybe try and play a little bit of mind games with Piastri and Norris, just to back them up a little bit, just to see if Leclerc and Russell could close in. But I think even if they attempted that, it wouldn't really have changed much. So my driver of the weekend is going to be Max Verstappen. I think the way he's ended the year, and he was the first driver to congratulate Lando on the World Championship. That was a class act, I think, from Max.
Absolutely, yes. So then, Corinne, back to you then for your driver of the weekend, and then I'll try and find something between them for 2 answers myself.
I mean, you if you look at it objectively, you can't argue with what Tom's just said, really. That Max is stuck it on pole, led the race, from the start, won the race, and like you say, straight over to congratulate Lando as he was getting out of the car. And I've got to say, though, on that though, it was lovely to see so many of the drivers taking time to go and congratulate Lando. Actually, I thought watching that was quite emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. I sort of had to take myself away from the TV, because every time they were talking to Adam at some point, they were talking to Mark Berryman, his manager, and all these people got fantastic stories. And then Siska comes on, they put a microphone in front of her. She's clearly not as sort of like well media trained as Adam and Mark, and she's there just lost for words, just staring into the abyss and just going, I don't know what to say. And then gives the story about all those years of like Adam taking the 2 boys one way and her taking the 2 girls another. And she said, I missed years of like his life from the moment he was like naked on a tractor, I think she described it as. So it is beautiful, this whole culmination of a championship. Whether you hate or love a driver, you can have your favorites, of course. You can have your favorite teams, but I think you have to have that level of respect when your driver has lost to someone else, when your team has lost to someone else, or when your team has won. To be able to sit there and go, actually, this is the definition, this is the moment of their lives, they've earned this. It hasn't fallen their way accidentally. This has been the culmination of long hours in garages, in pouring rain, in getting to all kinds of areas of the country, putting your house back into like remortgaged territory because you just need a new set of tires, and then you can win the championship. And if you win that championship, then who knows where your career is going to go. The culmination of that, just to be one moment that's happened today, is just wonderful. So yeah, I'm fully with you on that being the like towards the highlight. My highlight of the weekend, I'm going to say, is more that it was just a straight fight. As you alluded to there, Tom, Max could have stopped, put soft tires on, then he would have had the car and the gap, it would have only been a couple of seconds to just say, right, I'm here just going to slow you up. I'm just going to do everything in my power. But the fact that he just went out there and delivered an incredible performance, really, to win this race by as much as he did, to dominate at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, when, he needed to go out there and win. The task was simple for himself and Oscar Piastri: go and win the race, and he delivered exactly that. And that was it. We got a straightforward fight between our championship contenders, with only that little bit of Yuki Tsunoda outside interference really to sort of cast any kind of shadow. And I wouldn't say that it did at all. There was no sort of weird safety cars or anything like that, but we won't get into that. My driver of the weekend, I'm going to go away from those 2 teams. I'm going to give it to Charles Leclerc. I think, as we say, that Ferrari hasn't been that car for a long time. He hasn't been in the same discussion even as the McLarens, as Verstappen. And I think it would have been very easy for him today at points to just go, do you know what, I'm just going to stay out of the championship fight. They've got lots to win or lots to lose, and just sit there. But he went for it. He made a real case I think, today, that going into next year, that Ferrari are going to be one of those teams that we've discussed that are in that fight. You know, make no bones about it. Whilst the car's not been great in 2025, they've been working tirelessly on 2026, and they are very much in that championship fight, I think. And they go again. You know, we started this year saying, could they be championship contenders? It hasn't turned out that way, but we don't go to next year and think they won't. They'll be out of it. So, yeah, I'm going to give it to Charles Leclerc on this one. I think driver of the day. Guys, thank you both so much once again for joining me and getting into the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. I'll put all the posts and links to all your social medias down below in the notes. If you want to follow Corinne, you want to follow Tom Cairns in everything that they do, check out those notes, go and follow them. And myself as well, if you want to follow my journey. We'll be back next couple of weeks. I'm going to do a season review. Keith will be back. Yes, he gave me some pre-season predictions. One of mine didn't come off, which was Piastri world champion, which reminds me, Tom, we got £5 to sort out, because I think it was after Zandvoort. I can't remember which race it was, but
I think it might be before Zandvoort. It was the summer break when we discussed it.
It was even before then.
Yeah, we were debating who would win the championship between Norris and Piastri, because we didn't consider Max being in the championship at the time. But
it was insane, wasn't it? I said to you, who's going to win it? It was Max. That was the choice. It was Lando or Oscar. That was it. There was no debate that it was going to be one of those two. And you quite rightly went with Lando, and I sort of raised my eyebrow and went, "Are you sure?" And yeah, £5 in it for you. So well done for that.
Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go on.
There is a lovely, lovely little girl who met Lando at the MTC a while back called, I believe her name is Aaliyah, and she makes bracelets and sells them and raises money for charity. She has cerebral palsy. Maybe that £5 could go to that charity.
I tell you what, £5 can go to Tom, and £5 can go to that charity anyway. How about that? We'll do that instead.
Or what we could do, sacrifice the £5 coming to me, and both of us can send a £5 to the charity. How about that?
Do that as well. Yeah. Like, we'll just all the money to that girl. I posted about it. I almost didn't want to talk about to even give these people that tore her down like any kind of space. I know that the Pod have said their piece about this, but it was so disheartening to see people tearing her down just for being a Lando fan. And I hope she is having the greatest day as a Lando fan and reveling in the fact that he's now champion. And honestly, yeah, anyone go and get one of those bracelets. I'll put the link to that below as well. But as I say, thank you both for joining me. Well done, Corinne, for showing off. You have to make some noise or you won't be on the video, unfortunately, because it only shows one at a time. But
I do have one, actually.
There you go. So I will have one next time. Well, it depends when it gets when I record and when it gets delivered. I will have one on as well. So yes, thank you both for joining me. Thank you everyone for listening at home. That was the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. That's been the 2025 season. As I say, next week and probably the week after, I'm going to split it into two bits. Myself and Keith will be discussing our pre-season predictions, how we got on, and yeah, tearing apart the season and seeing where each team could have done better or where they did very well. So until then, until next year, when we will be back doing more of this, thank you all. And of course, see you spoon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.